Welcome to the Voices for Voices podcast, sponsored by Redwood Living. Thank you for joining us today. I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host and humanitarian. You can learn more about Voices for Voices on our Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and our website, voicesforvoices.org. Voices for Voices is a 501c3 nonprofit charity organization that survives solely on donations. So if you are able to, please consider heading over to voicesforvoices.org to help us continue our mission and the goal and dream to help 3 billion people over the course of my lifetime and beyond. Or you can also send a donation to the mailing address of Voices for Voices at 2388 Beckett Circle, Stowe, Ohio, 44224. Looking for a volunteer opportunity? Great. You can reach out to us today via email at president@voicesforvoices.org. I founded Voices for Voices to provide a platform for folks to share their stories with others as we work to break the stigma around mental health, accessibility, and disabilities, helping people get the help they need while also helping them prepare or transition into the workforce with the Voices for Voices Career Center, where we connect talent with opportunity for job seekers and employers alike, from coast to coast and in every industry and job level. Today, I am joined by Allison Rose Clark, a resident of New South Wales, Australia, which is very close to Sydney, Australia. She has been an inspiration to many in overcoming abuse and mental health challenges. I met Allison Rose Clark, I believe it was in 2019, before Voices for Voices became an organization. I met her on LinkedIn, we chatted, I read her book, which she'll get to in our conversation, and her book, as well as chatting with her and overcoming what she has and wanting to also help others, regardless of if we're in Northeast Ohio and Hudson, or if we're thousands of miles away on another continent. And so what I was able to do, because of the time change and trying to sync up when I could get in studio and when the time was convenient for Allison, was I taped a Zoom conversation with her. So we're gonna go ahead and check that out. Thanks again for joining us. I can't be more happy to again be joined by Allison Rose Clark. She's coming to us from New South Wales, Australia, which is closer to, I think, the eastern coast of Australia. So
Yeah,
so to get the timing to match up, we thought that doing a Zoom interview would be the best to make sure that we're not catching each other in the middle of the night. So Allison Rose, thank you again for joining us on the Voices for Voices podcast.
thank you very much for having me and inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, and for our audience, our viewers, our listeners, I met virtually Allison Rose back in, I guess it would be 2019, as I was starting to think about the Voices for Voices event, how Voices for Voices started with having a once a year event where individuals could share their stories, no matter where they're at in the world, no matter what their gender. Some may be able to do music, some may be able to do art, some can do through the spoken word, etc. And so I came across Allison Rose's profile and background,
and experience and stories. And she has very powerful experiences, which she's gonna get into, and very raw. So you're gonna hear uh, raw emotions, raw experiences, and again with the organization Voices for Voices, we want to and we are, especially by coming back around here, by bringing Allison Rose back to our audience, want to share her story, her courageous story. And she and her story is really one of the underpinnings of me wanting to really take the Voices for Voices event and turn it into the organization. So, Allison, you want to get started by maybe just talking about uh, kind of like maybe like the down part of the beginning of your story.
Yeah, sure. So yes, I'm from the east side of um, New South Wales in a place called Lake Illawarra, and I've lived here all my life. Um, so do you want me to start from the very beginning of my life?
No, no, no. Just kind of like the rougher
I,
parts. Yeah, yeah. Kind of going through
the
your
rougher
your
part.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when I was 8, I was sexually assaulted by my cousin, and then I experienced bullying at school. Um, and after that, I left school. I got married. That turned out to be an abusive marriage. The second marriage, because I married again, second marriage was also abusive. And my third marriage is was also abusive. It included spiritual abuse in that one, as well as the other kinds of abuse that you experience. And then I wrote my book, decided that I was going to help women predominantly learn to love themselves again, because it was like an epiphany where I thought just one day saying, why do I find myself in these situations? Why do I let people treat me like crap?
Mhm.
And um, and it just dawned on me, is like I didn't love myself. I hated myself. I would allow people to treat me that way. So because I wouldn't treat myself that way, I was looking for punishment for, I guess, for my own guilt in certain parts of my life that I blame myself for, which I know now that aren't my fault. But I still felt that guilt that went with it. So I went through this journey of just wanting to guide people, women predominantly, into how to love themselves again, and therefore um, have the more ability and confidence and strength to reject abuse. And that abuse doesn't just stop with relationships. That is also family and friends that may treat you in the same manner that you don't realise until you go through my book.
Mhm.
um, as one of the guides for showing people that. So my book is called I Don't Hate Me Anymore. Um, Love Yourself Completely Without Compromising. It is a reprint of the original book, which is I Don't Hate Me Anymore, 12 Steps You Never Knew You Needed. So it's been reprinted for various reasons that aren't really relevant, but led me to having to do that. So
Do you want to show the copy just
oh
so
yeah,
that everybody can see what
yeah,
the
sure. Okay, I've got the old one. So my old one, which I didn't is pink color, pink purpley with yellow leaves and yellow writing, which yellow is, it has a meaning. The yellow is light, energy and brightness, strength. The purple represented royalty, so the importance of yourself, that you are important. The dragonfly represents you, and the web is representing life. So the whole meaning of the cover is you have the strength to break through the troubles of life. So yeah, then the second copy, because I had to change a few things for the reasons why I had to get it reprinted, is now, and I'm not sure you can really see, but there's a green, there's still a bit of purple, but it's as close as I could possibly get to the original. So now, yeah, and that's when I changed the actual title to I Don't Hate Me Anymore, Love Yourself Completely Without Compromising. Yeah.
I love it. I have the first version. I'm gonna have to get a hold of the second copy, and thank you for going into the depth, not just on the cover and the meaning, because I think that's sometimes that gets lost in translation. Just with so many self-published authors out there, and just trying to make a buck or two, that the thought that really does go into the cover is meaningful, and so thanks for that explanation, and going into depth about getting getting the book written, and some of the experiences. I know there wasn't a particular, and maybe there was, I don't think so, but I'm just going to ask, so I'm not assuming, that there was maybe one time, one experience that led you to want to share with women, share with people, that they are valued, that not take what people say at face value, even though it's tough, and even though you're living those experiences day to day. Was there a particular experience where you said, "Okay, now I'm going to get started, and now I know what path I want to go into," or were there kind of just maybe just a series of things in your mind, and you started to go down that path of sharing and catharsis of venting a little bit, which I know very well myself. Can you maybe discuss that a little bit?
Okay, well, there isn't really one sort of moment where I just went boom. Nobody, didn't take everything personal. I did. It took me a long time. I would take what people said to me as a personal attack. And since my mental health was not diagnosed back then, I used to go off the Richter scale, basically. And a lot of people decided they thought I was scary, that I was unpredictable, and they had to walk around on eggshells around me, which is probably true for a part of it. But it was a long journey. So I did some workshops and some groups around domestic violence, around personal growth to improve my own sense of being and value and worth. I also tried the quotes and inspirational things, but the main thing that really hit me was when I was sitting out the back of my house that I shared with my third husband, and that's when I said to myself, why is this happening? Why am I allowing people to treat this? And that's the key, is why am I allowing people to treat me like this? And then I just went, poof, it's because I hate myself and I allow people to treat me like that, because it's a form of punishing myself. Not that I sat there and thought, hey, I'm going to punish myself by letting people treat me like a doormat.
Mhm.
It's because subconsciously I thought I deserved it, and that goes way back to when my cousin sexually abused me. So that's the when it all that I hate myself, the guilt, the allowing people to treat me like dirt, to withdraw, to not speak up. And that just followed me through adulthood until 2000 and no, it was 2000 when I was finally diagnosed with they said major depression. And in 2014, after 14 years of this medication and still being up and down with my emotions, where I would be really happy one minute, like telling everyone, I love you, text messages, phone calls, I love you, and you mean so much to me, to just down where I wanted to just die. And but I didn't want to die at my own hands, but I wanted to die. And I begged God to let me wake up dead. Not you can wake up dead, but in the spirit world, you wake up and not realize you're dead. So that's what I mean by that. And when I got finally diagnosed with everything, it was bipolar, I had a panic disorder, an OCD, and yeah, can't, can't remember my own diagnosis. It's like too many. So I was put on these medications, which helped. And from then on, so it's only been since 2014 to now, which is 9 years that I've had my mental health in check, stable, with the correct medications. Yeah, and I'm not scary anymore to people. So yeah, which is great, of course. No one likes to be scary, but I didn't really actually know that I was all those things until later. I actually thought all that was normal, that that everybody felt this way when they were angry, that you know, I just thought I was normal. I didn't know anything different. Yeah, so when I found out all those things, it really hurt my feelings, and I was really upset. And but now you can bring something up to me and say, hey, Ali, you've done, you hurt my feelings back there. And I'll go, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that. And I can explain myself, or I apologize. And I apologize. I always own up to my own mistakes. Not a, big deal. I'm not going to die. I'm just going to be honest and hold my integrity to people. Yeah.
Very, very, one word I'm thinking of is very brave, to kind of weather the storm, not just of the experiences themselves, but as you're working through your mental health, and you know, there, and I guess I'll speak from my experience of finding out in my 30s, my diagnosis of major depression and anxiety and low spectrum autism, that there was more than fair share of people that were like, oh well, if you weren't diagnosed with autism at, when you were little, then what, how valid is that diagnosis now in your 30s? So just all that to say that not everything happens in a straight line. Not everything happens, whether it's a diagnosis or relationships. It's not always everything's great. And I can attest to those ups and downs as well of things are going great. I love what I'm doing. I love these things and these specific areas and having these conversations and all the things happening with the organization. Uh, and then there's literally stopping on a dime, like, don't want to get out of bed, just want to sleep. And so recovery, it's not a straight line, and it's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something that uh, is cured, but let alone, okay, on January 3rd, 2023, I was cured of these particular ailments. And I think that's been a big struggle that I've had, working with people and just letting them know my background somewhere, like, oh, that you're being way too upfront about all this. Like, you should maybe, take a step back and not share so much. Um, but I like you, once you're all into something, I find that that's the best way to be. When you have that emotional attachment to what you're doing, that when you wake up in the morning, you're more than bought in because of reason A, B, and C. You're bought in also on that emotional side to say, you know what? Yeah, things are going to get tough, and maybe I'm burnout today, but I know tomorrow or next week, when I regroup,
Yeah.
because I'm passionate, because the things I'm working on are
Mm.
so tied to me emotionally. Um, so that long-winded response to say not just the experiences you've been through, but that kind of mental health up and down. That it's hard, and I think to hear your perspective about it, and medication changes, and uh, years go by, and the diagnosis changes. Those are all those are all tough things to go through. It's not just
Yeah.
like going to the doctor and saying, "Okay, stay off your leg for a week," or wear this cast for 2 weeks. It's with you everywhere you go. It's when you're resting, when you wake up in the morning, and when you eat your meals. If, like me, I didn't want to eat for a period of time, that my body
Yeah.
was rejecting food, and so thank you for being so candid with with those experiences. Somebody that might be watching or listening. Is gonna be inspired by you, and so if those individuals are at that point of, this is it, this is enough, I'm gonna start going down a different path, and I'm gonna take little steps in a different direction to hopefully, help my outlook. What maybe ideas do you have of getting started? I know writing a book doesn't just happen overnight.
Mm.
What are maybe some of the things you did kind of early on in that building into the book, that somebody could look at doing and not think that it's overbearing to get started?
Okay. The build up to my book was when I realized that I hated myself. I started sticking up for myself. Um, Even though I was in an abusive relationship, my life wasn't in danger. So I was able to do that. If someone's listening and they have these very serious domestic violence, I wouldn't recommend taking this straight up, that just making sure that you go and get some help, um, and make a plan and move that way. Um, but if they're not, like myself, I wasn't in that position. So I started putting that into action, so I would stand up for myself. So when he's told me that, um, you know, that, I can't cook, for instance, he said I couldn't cook. that because I didn't follow a recipe, that I was stupid. And, you know, one minute he's saying it's a great meal, and the next minute he's saying it's not. So I would turn around and say, well, no, it is good. Everybody else liked it. You're just wanting to complain about something. Another time was when he tried to use the Bible against me, saying that you can learn to love. And I said, yes, I know that. And he said, there's nowhere in the Bible that says that you know, marriages weren't based on love back then. And I said, the majority of them, I agree, but there's one with Ruth and Obed where it wasn't like that. It was love. And so God has given us an example of, yes, even though you can love someone, learn to love them. It also, they have to also love you, and it doesn't have to be a over time thing where you're forced to be in that situation, but something where you can just you know, instantly fall in love with someone, or over, you know, a couple of weeks and you fall into love with them. But it's usually, you know, it's pretty much instant, if you say. Well, you know, that's what I turned around and said to him, where he got angry because of that, because he couldn't come back at me with anything. And so I learned to stand up for myself. But that, yeah, so yeah, standing up for yourself. So basically, I went back and tried to figure out where it all started, where that root is in my life that's keeping me, where it all started. So, you know, I started to feel guilty and hate myself, and, you know, hang around people who would abuse me and not stand up for myself. That started when I was 8. You know, I started hating wearing glasses, for instance, because people would start picking on me about my glasses. So I was self-conscious about how I looked. So that's where I went back, and that's probably the first step that I would recommend people, is to find out where it started if possible, because, you know, a lot of people may not be able to find that. But if you can, to go back and see where it all started, and how it's affected your life, your choices, because everything, your perception of what's happening to you is the main thing, not whether someone's intention was good or bad. It's how you perceive it. So how you perceive it really influences the decisions you make from there. So yeah, so that's how I started my book as well, is that's where I started, and then I worked through steps, and when I wrote my book, I did them in those steps. So even though I had all this experience with counselling and tools and stuff, I was still in this position where I hated myself. So all those things on their own, inspirational books and stuff that I read, they really didn't give me any idea where to start or how to get that in my life. I could see how they did it, but in my life, it's different. I can't, you know, their methods don't necessarily work in my life. So that's where I started my book, was Down and Out is the title of the first chapter, which is aimed at finding out where you started and where it is that you began your down and out walk through life and adult life. So yeah, you don't have to, it's not something that you necessarily think about. And I know people say don't look at the past, just forget it, it's in the past. But some things in your past, you can't just leave there. You have to look at it, you have to deal with it, and in the sense of how it's hurt you, and find some way of forgiving yourself for blaming yourself. And then, yeah, so don't, I've lost track of my conversation, which is another thing that I tend to go through due to my mental health issues and my survival techniques when I was little in order to survive. I used to blank my mind and try and not hear the voices in, like, my own voice in my head, so that I could escape reality, basically. So it's a little bit like dissociation, but just where you can't hear your thoughts. They're there, you can't stop them, but I can't hear them. Don't know what they're saying. So yeah, in those stressful moments, like this, now it's just it's like my brain's got this habit and it's really hard to break. I'm trying to. I'm working really hard on that.
Yeah, you're
So sorry, everyone.
You're doing
Went off there for a
fantastic.
little bit. So yeah, yeah, just
Getting started and believing in yourself are very hard, and as you know, and that's something I would agree with you is, uh, for me and my mental health, it was accepting that I couldn't kind of cure myself. I couldn't cure things in the past. I couldn't do things on my own. And from kind of flip side of uh, being a male, of you're not supposed to cry. You're supposed to be able to handle everything. And why are you upset? And get out of bed. And some of those things were very, very hard. And that's part that I know with me getting to the point of accepting, hey, I need help, isn't kind of the first thing that usually goes through anybody's mind. Because I thought I was able to do everything on my own with very little mediation from a doctor. And so 35 years into life of finding that, okay, uh, am I going to accept where I'm at and go from the me philosophy to the we with the team is huge. Uh, and for anybody out there that is in that kind of influx, not sure, eh, not sure if they should talk to somebody or see somebody. I can't make that decision for you. Allison can't make that decision for you. We're not trained
okay.
trained profession
So
trained professionals to do that. Um, what we would just say is kind of take kind of an inventory of where you're at. Like, are you in a healthy relationship? Not just with
yeah,
others, but with yourself. I was in a very toxic relationship with myself of um, substance and alcohol abuse that I couldn't even think about somebody else if it wasn't if I couldn't think of myself, if I couldn't take care of my own self. So I know society likes for us to always look at others as always the problem, and sometimes that's the case. But when we kind of look inside, to Allison's point of, okay, this isn't right. What's really going on here? And I'm going to stand up for myself. She's starting to take that self-worth and say, look, I'm not going to be a doormat. I'm not going to be walked over. That I am a human being and I am worthy of being a human. And uh, not let somebody talk disparaging and negative, and just let that happen. So that's where I kind of go back to that term brave. It's brave to go through those experiences, and it's super brave to come out on the other side, and not even take it the super super brave to talk about it and publish a book and come on a podcast like ours and others that you've been on, and sharing so much of what you've been through, and how you're really overcoming as much as we can as human beings, because we know that we're not gonna kind of be cured from the mental side of things, and that we're going to have to just we're going to do the best we can, and we're gonna go that route. I think, just to your point, Allison, just being cognizant of whether the and I've had the time where the voices or the thoughts like, Justin, you should do this, or no, don't do that, that's not fun. And I, like you, lucky to be at a point where I'm able to get above that a little bit, whether that's the therapy, whether that's the medication,
Yeah.
whatever that is. But that's when I can almost imagine that you feel the most productive, where you're not kind of battling yourself internally of, should I do this or shouldn't I, and what do the people think, and you're really able to get
Mm.
above that as much as you can, and you're going day to day, and you're coming on this podcast, you're sharing with a TV audience and an audio audience and video, and people are going to read about this as well as the other podcasts you've been on. And I hope that this propels you even more. Can you just describe the feeling of kind of being above some of that noise, of how that makes you feel, versus where you're just constantly like battling, and like 10 minutes goes by and you're like, I don't know where that 10 minutes went, because I was kind of in my mind, in my head, battling myself of, should I do this or shouldn't I? Whereas now, and more out of not times, you're just doing it, and you're just continuing on.
Yeah, well, yes, I agree. You're not going to totally cure yourself. You will have uh, episodes of mental health issues because medication is only part of it. It's not the be all and end all, I take a tablet and it's all gone. It doesn't work that way. Um, and the same with the consequences of other people's actions. The abuse that you have experienced, the damage it's left doesn't it doesn't necessarily go. You're still going to have reactions, have those things come up every now and then. And if you have post-traumatic stress disorder, and that's exactly what's going to happen to you, is this little, and that's what the other thing that I couldn't remember before is post-traumatic stress disorder. So where I went through a phase as a kid, I was really, really scared of any male, and any person going in the same, direction on the same side of the street as me, especially if it was a man. When I was a young adult, I couldn't even walk to the bar because it felt like that the men were out to hurt me. Someone's going to notice me and they're going to want to hurt me. Even when I had my license, I used to think people were following me. I mean, just things like that would trigger. And one other time that triggered was with my second husband, and he bought me some lingerie, sexy lingerie, and that triggered me. I couldn't move. It's like I just went, I can't do this, I can't wear it. It's just, and I tried and I just couldn't, and I couldn't get through that. So I got him to, take it back and swap it for something else. But yeah, that's what's going to happen. Like, people are going to have that. But to remember that that's just not a relapse. so much as you're just having an episode.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that it's not working. It just means you have to go back to somewhere, part of the to a certain part of the journey, and just go from there back through it to work through that bit. So that may be a cycle that you go through times, and you may not. You might be, you might have all that down pat. You may be able to bring it just like that by bringing it around just by using tools that you've got. And that's fantastic. If you can do that, it's awesome. Since my third husband, I have, really been doing this stuff. And last year I did have a huge mental health relapse, or not relapse, episode, which lasted the majority of the year. There were things that triggered all that, which didn't help. But now I'm back to where if I think something negative, I'm able to turn it around straight away. Like if I say I'm ugly, I can turn around and say, no, you're not. You're not ugly.
Okay.
One of the things I told my friend a while ago was that people, including myself, don't like photos being taken, right? But, in 10 years' time, when you look back, you're going to think you're pretty. So you've just wasted 10 years thinking that you're ugly or unlovable, when in fact you are beautiful. And you can see the beauty looking behind. So I let people take photos of me now because I know to them I'm not ugly. But I also know in 10 years' time, if I still feel that way about myself at times, which I do, then I just remind myself, no, in 10 years' time, I'm going to look back and see the beauty that everyone else saw. So yeah, that's something that I live by too now, so that if it happens, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, and
And
I'm glad you brought that up, that sometime it might work, sometimes something that a thought process or a technique might work in a situation today, and then maybe tomorrow or in a week that
yeah,
you or I try to utilize that same technique, and maybe it doesn't. And I think that's where just having as many tools and ideas and ways to kind of work through. So you're not just working through
yeah,
one thought or one idea, you're working through many different thoughts and
yeah.
ideas before you kind of reach that bottom part, versus before it's like, oh, I'm going straight there, and how am I going to get out?
Yeah, which is some of the things in my book helps to show you how to see, helps you to look at your own life, at yourself, and what's in your life, so that you can see all the positives, because we don't tend to see the positives, we tend to see the negatives and sort of hang on to them and dwell on them. But if you can see the good things in yourself, the good things that you have in life, then you will see more positives around you. So the steps in my book, I've tried to make them as, in some sort of logical way, so that each is a step towards not this backwards forward, which is what, when I went through counselling, I had all these techniques, and I'd talk about it, but it just didn't seem to be hold. It just didn't seem to hold. But with this technique, and with my technique, and with my the layout of my book and the uniqueness of it, it's being a self-help, a self-improvement book with a workbook, and it's incorporating it's incorporating my life experiences in a way that you just wouldn't expect. through a self-improvement book. And that's, you know, some people have told me it's just uniquely written. So I know that for sure, that there's no book out there that has been written in this way as a self-help, as a self-improvement book. So yeah, I find that when I follow them myself, it's not just I've made them up in my head. These are the things that I've taken from years of counselling, as well as my self experiencing life, and just understanding some of the things that I went through. So the documents that I've suggested in my book, they're all on my wall, so I can remind myself of these things, and like the things about myself and the things that are in my life, that I remind myself of these things. And I have there's a unique treatment plan that I talk about in my book as well.
Yeah, and
So
I'm just checking out from your first version that I have we're talking about positives about myself. So you're not just talking about, here, go do these things and these will make you miraculously better. You're going through that process while you're writing the book of, I'm not just telling you to, oh, go and write down 10 things that you feel that are positive about you or about your day. And I'm just going to read a few for our listeners, for our viewers, to get this, for search engine optimization, and for people to really see and hear. So, I am kind. I love how I can write good poetry. I help others when they need it. That says nothing about money. That just says I help others when they need it. So I just want to throw that. I am beautiful. I am worth being loved. I am valuable. I am amazing. I am friendly. I am outgoing. I have patience with others. To name just a few. And I think that that's awesome that you added that and you went through that process. It it's not just being the teacher, but you're being the student too. You're kind of bringing all that together. Um, we just have a few minutes left, so I wanted to ask, because I I'm starting to have more of an appreciation for art, and not like Picasso and those. Well, I do like checking out a museum from time to time if I can, but just any type of art, any type of expression of an experience, of a thing, of a point in time. You do put some artwork pieces in your book. How important was and is art just in your life, and what type of an impact do you think that's made on you being where you're at today, and maybe that being a tool that you use?
yeah, okay. I find that the most emotional part of my journey in expressing myself. My poetry started when I was in year 4, 1984, and I'm still writing poetry. And it was a way of expressing myself. Now I'm a bit more creative in the way I write my poetry, so that's another journey that I've gone through. The drawings, I'm gonna cry. My drawings, they express what I went through. There's one called Yesterday's Tears. There's another one, Waiting to be Rescued. There's a few positive ones in there that I've stuck in there. There's another one called Survived, where I've put the depiction of a heart having been stabbed and shot at and sliced and chopped up. But the fact is that I'm still here. I'm still here. I survived all of that. Um, and another one is putting my heart in a box, trying to protect it from everything. I don't want to get hurt anymore. But I realize when I do that, I also leave out and shut out all the good things in my life as well. All the good people want to help me with. I'm saying, no, I don't need that. I can do it myself. I realized I was shutting out everything, not just the bad stuff, but the good stuff as well. So yeah, so most of mine has been drawing, but other people may have other forms of creating their own expressions. Yeah, there's no limit to that. But yeah, my drawings are quite powerful and meaningful and meant something to me when I was going through something, like I was feeling something intense or sad. Yeah, so I encourage people to do some of that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, I, I I'm even different today than when we've chatted in the past. Just blown away by how in detail, how kind of raw your emotions are, and I know you're doing that for yourself, but you're also that's who you are as an individual, and I know that that is part of helping others because seeing somebody and it's kind of tough to think about it, seeing somebody in a vulnerable state, seeing, somebody, anybody, but like myself in a state of being in a situation like, I wonder what he's going to do. Like he's, he's upset. Uh, it really gives people a learning opportunity to go through and to know that like, that's okay. If drawing and art is a way of expression, it's okay. If writing is a way of an expression, it's okay. If music is, whatever
Yeah,
thing or things that somebody likes to do or is drawn to, it's okay. Don't have somebody tell you it's not. And battling kind of those internal dialogues is tough. Uh, but that's one thing that I found that if I whether if I need some time just to decompress from answering emails or social media or that list goes on, then I just do it. Um, and so for you to go through so many different methods and ways, you go through lists, you go through specific experiences in paragraph form, you go through the actual art, the drawings and the meaning, you go through the cover and the meaning of why yellow or gold or why there's a spider web, um, why there's dragonflies. I I just want to thank you for being so just being yourself. There's words that can be said, but just being yourself and just sharing. And that's a gift um, that not many people have, and when you have it, I'm glad that you're spending your days and nights and working and doing things like this because I I know it's gonna help. It has, and and by seeing how many followers, how many people are checking your LinkedIn, just for an example, um, and then being asked to be on different podcasts and different media outlets, that that that's awesome. And I just want to
yeah,
again just thank you for being just so much yourself, just being authentic, just being you're just humanizing what a human goes through in life, the ups, the downs, and finding ways to kind of work through it and saying, okay, well, I'm going to try this way. And you know what, I have a penchant for being a good writer, so maybe let me try this vehicle. And I've said it many times, and I'll say it again that your writing and your experience and us chatting kind of at the outset, before Voices for Voices started as an organization, what was had a lot to do with just continuing on to wanting to do something more than just a once a year event, which it's awesome. It's amazing. You were part of the inaugural a brand new day event, and
The kick off. The
yeah,
spring.
yeah, and and I'm just blown away by the support and just people finding an interest of it's helping and bringing people from across the world. That I'm in the state of Ohio in the United States of America, and you're in the country of Australia, and we're having a conversation about real topics. And so you're not just helping people, as you know, in your homeland, you're helping and are going to continue to help people across the world. So I hope that that makes you feel good inside. Lastly, how can people find out about you? Find out about your uh, what you're up to, learn more about you, follow you. How can they do that?
Okay, I'm on LinkedIn as Allison Rose Clark. Just Allison Rose Clark. Um, and you can find me on Facebook as um, I Don't Hate Me Anymore, Allison Rose Clark author. It's a
Mhm.
really long one, but you can also find me on, or you can also purchase my book from Smashwords, um, which is something that I've just recently been able to, uh, due to last year being such a mental health, uh, it's that I've got it on Smashwords now. So the other bits are still working on. My
Mhm.
website is alisonroseclark.com.au, and you
Thank you.
can purchase it from my website as well. However, international may be a little bit difficult during costs, but yeah, the ebook's available for those people who want it. Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, for sharing the information. We'll add that in the podcast notes, uh, so that'll be shared with everybody that checks us out, no matter which way they do. Uh, so, Allison, thank you so much for being with us on the Voices for Voices podcast. I wish you nothing but success and happiness and health and whatever that looks like for you. Just thank you for the impact you've had on me and my life and with Voices for Voices. And I know we'll be in contact in the future.
awesome. Yeah, yeah. Just before we leave, I just want to say that even though my book was originally for women between 30 and 50, I've actually had a lot of men read it, including yourself.
Yeah.
So it's not just for anyone,
Oh
but
no. Yeah.
I mean, not just for women, it's
Right.
for
Right.
everyone. Get that backwards. All
Great.
right.
Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope everybody checks you out, checks your book out, follows you. Uh, is Allison's a great person. Has taken a lot of time to be with us today, and we love chatting with her.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Voices for Voices podcast. Thank you also to our guest, Allison Rose Clark, for spending some time with us from her home in Australia. Until next time, I am Justin Allen Hayes, founder and executive director of Voices for Voices, host, and Humanitarian. Until next time, have a great day and be a voice for yourself or somebody in need.